Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Lageson, and I am the developer of the Peers program. I'm also a licensed clinical psychologist, a clinical professor at UCLA, and I'm also the founder and director of the UCLA Peers Clinic, as well as the director of the Tarjan Center at UCLA. And I'm very pleased to be here today to share with you the science of making friends for autistic teens and adults. And this is based on our research with the UCLA Peers program. I have a very special affinity to the Organization for Autism Research, who funded some of the very first research that I did with the UCLA Peers for Young Adults program. And so, very happy to be here today on the OAR Impact Day. So, thank you for having me. I want to begin with just a very brief disclosure statement that I do receive book royalties from the sales of my books and manuals from Taylor and Francis and Wiley and Sons. I also receive research funding from the National Institutes of Health, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the California Department of Rehabilitation, as well as NIMBLE and Autism Speaks. I have a couple of learning objectives here for you today, and I'm hoping by the end of this very brief talk that you'll have a good understanding of ecologically valid social skills that are found to be helpful in making and keeping friends. Also, an awareness of evidence-based strategies for teaching social skills that enhance outcomes and also generalization of the skills. And also some insight into the immediate and long-term outcomes of peers for autistic adolescents and adults that are interested in making and keeping friends. Briefly, what we'll talk about is just some social differences that you often see among autistic youth and adults. Talk about an overview of the peers curriculum and some of the skills that we teach. Talk about the role of neurodiversity and some evidence-based methods of teaching social skills, as well as giving you a couple of strategies that we teach in peers, particularly related to friendships and also related to bullying. And then we'll wrap things up with a brief research summary related to both immediate and long-term outcomes of peers, as well as providing some resources for all of you. So we know that there are common social differences among autistic youth. We know social communication is often different among neurodivergent and autistic youth. Social awareness is sometimes a little bit different. Sometimes our young people that we work with describe having difficulty understanding social cues and picking up on some nonverbal forms of communication. Many of the young people we work with also describe difficulty around social engagement, things like knowing how to organize get togethers with friends or how to interact with people outside of school or more structured settings. Social cognition is another kind of hallmark feature in autism where people often have difficulty with perspective taking, which can certainly impact social relationships. But bottom line is that a lot of the young people that we work with really describe a desire to make and keep friends, but often have difficulty developing and maintaining those types of friendships. We also know that there tends to be a higher incidence of bullying and victimization among autistic youth. And so, of course, this is another area that we want to target in social skills programs. So this has really led me to develop the Peers intervention. Peers was initially developed at UCLA back in 2004, but it's now been translated into over a dozen languages. It's used in over 150 countries, and we have evidence-based social skills programs for preschoolers, for adolescents. We have a school-based curriculum for school-based professionals, as well as a program for young adults. And more recently, I've started to develop and test programs around employment and dating. So we have Peers for Careers, which is a college to career transition program, and also Peers for Dating, which is a program focused on developing and maintaining romantic relationships. So some of the unique aspects of Peers is that Peers is really one of the only evidence-based or research-supported programs across the globe. We also have programs that involve parents and caregivers as social coaches to young people, and that's to help generalize skills into more natural social settings and to provide support long term. This program, though, is really only appropriate for socially motivated participants. They need to want to be there in order for this to work. I would also argue that it's not really ethical to force social skills programs onto people who don't want to learn the skills. So it's very important to highlight that This is really for people who are intrinsically motivated to learn the skills that we teach in peers. We're also only teaching ecologically valid social skills in peers. And what that means is that we're not teaching just what we think that young people should do in social situations, but we're teaching what we actually know works through research. That's what makes it ecologically valid. Finally, another unique aspect of peers is that it's one of the very few cross-culturally adapted and validated social skills programs in the world. And this has been decades of research working with really brilliant research partners across the globe in not only culturally adapting these social skills programs, but also testing them to make sure that they're actually effective with those adaptations. So I think the role of neurodiversity is also very important to talk about from the outset. Neurodiversity, of course, means that people have different ways of thinking or interacting with the world. And we should respect the role of neurodiversity when learning new social strategies or teaching new strategies. These differences, though, they don't make us less than or more than, they're simply differences. And there's a lot of strengths in neurodiversity, and peers is very much a strengths-based approach. It's always working on building those strengths and building upon existing strengths. So it's really also important to talk about the role of choice in this program. So each week in Peers, we review strategies and friendships and relationships that have shown to be either socially helpful or maybe kind of socially risky. And learning and using these strategies that are taught in Peers really shouldn't be about changing the person, right? It's more about enhancing social interactions so other people can appreciate us for who we already are. So ultimately, learning and using these strategies that are taught in peers, it's always going to be about a choice. You always have the choice whether to do these things or not. So to really keep with that idea of neuro affirming approaches to kind of teaching and learning skills, each week in Peers, we have a neuro-affirming pledge. We begin every lesson by affirming this pledge, and that is that we value neurodiversity, acceptance, and authenticity. We honor the diverse ways that people experience the world. And we also respect each person's unique perspectives and communication styles. We also recognize that there's no one right way to connect with other people. So, if using the strategies in peers ever feels like camouflaging or masking, or if they don't align with that person's social goals, then they don't have to use them. Because ultimately, everything we teach in peers, learning these skills, using these skills, it always has to be about a personal choice. So, very important to always start every lesson with that neuro affirming pledge. We also use a lot of evidence-based methods of instruction in our program. So these are usually group-based programs. So we have weekly lessons with these concrete rules and steps of social behavior that have been found to be helpful and whatever the target goal is, whether it's making and keeping friends or dating, getting a job. But we're teaching ecologically valid skills that we've seen through research are helpful. We also provide a lot of role play demonstrations around these skills. So we'll model certain social behavior, and we model both socially risky as well as socially helpful behavior. And then we do a lot of perspective taking and trying to get into the mind of the other people that we're interacting with. There's a lot of small group practice. So the participants in our programs are interacting with each other, practicing with one another. And we also provide some social coaching kind of during these teachable moments where we, do a lot of performance feedback through our coaching and really try to refine the skills. In order to generalize the skills out into the real world, we have weekly assignments to practice in more natural social settings. This is hopefully with the support of, parents and other caregivers, maybe peers, in sort of providing that social coaching in the real world. And then, of course, this is the idea behind this is to really make sure that the skills generalize into more natural social settings. Now, it's not just important to assign skills to practice in the real world, but we also check in each week and we review those assignments from the previous lessons. And this gives us an opportunity to really individualize the program for each person. There's no one size fits all. And the way you individualize a program like Peers is through the homework review and seeing what's working and what's not working and trying to troubleshoot based on all of that. Homework review can also be a really good opportunity for more repetition of instruction. It's a very fast-paced program with lots of different skills being presented. So homework review gives us an opportunity to really remind each other what we've learned and what's working for us. And if it's not working, again, we can help to individualize that. So I wanted to give you a little highlight, little snapshot of a couple skills that we teach in Peers. And this first set of skills relates to friendships. And so if you think about, what kind of advice a lot of young people are given for making and keeping friends, imagine it's the first day of school or the first day of work. Maybe you've never met anyone before. Well, what are most people told to do? Well, they're often told to go up and say hi to people, or go up and introduce themselves. We ask this question over and over, and we always hear those responses. But have you ever thought about what that would look like? Like, imagine it's my first day of school or work, and I walk up to a group of strangers and I say, "Hi, I'm Liz," and sort of interrupt their conversation to introduce myself. What are they going to think of me? Are they going to want to talk to me? I mean, maybe not. I kind of interrupted their conversation. Is a little bit random, and it's actually not ecologically valid. It's not really what most people do in social situations to meet new people. And so we want to make sure that we're sort of dispelling some of those myths about what works and what doesn't work when we're talking about these strategies. So that's why it's always important to kind of begin with some of the more socially risky behaviors. And so this is a role play video that we often show in our groups. And in this video, you're going to see a woman by the name of Alina trying to enter a conversation with her peers that she doesn't know. And so we would introduce this role play by saying, if your goal is to make and keep friends, what is Alina doing here that may be a little socially risky in entering this group conversation?
Hey Jordan, you'll never guess. I saw Gabe at my favorite sushi restaurant this weekend.
No way, what restaurant was it?
Just the one right around the corner.
Oh, I've been meaning to try that place.
Yeah,
it's so close by. I felt bad that I'd never gone, but I went and it was so good.
Nice. What did you guys get?
I got the spicy tuna with crispy rice.
Yeah, it looked awesome.
Have you
And
guys been roller skating?
sorry, I just got the regular salmon.
There's this new skate park that just opened up. It's
I'm
really
sorry,
fun.
What did you get? Just the salmon roll. It was plain, but
They have
so
a Thursday night student night. A lot of people go to it.
Sorry.
To go there. I
Yeah.
wanted to try it out. It's really,
Yeah.
really fun. There's also this other place
What would you
by the
get if you
beach
went?
that I've been roller skating.
I'm sorry, what?
What would you get if you went?
It's really cool. It's like right by the water and lots of people go.
All right, so we would time out that role play. We'd ask what Alina did that was a little socially risky. And most of the young people we work with will say that she kind of barged into the conversation. She also wasn't on topic, right? We would ask, did it seem like the group wanted to talk to her? They would say no. And then we would do a little perspective taking. So what was that like for the group? It was maybe a little confusing at first, then maybe a little bit annoying. They were trying to have their conversation about sushi, right? She was talking about roller skating. What do they think of Alina? You might think she's a little bit intrusive, maybe a little bit rude. Would they want to talk to her again? Maybe not. We're not off to a great start, right? So this is not actually how people often join conversations that are already taking place. This would be a very socially risky way of doing that. You could do this, but again, it's pretty risky if your goal is to make and keep friends. So instead, we want to teach the ecologically valid strategy, the one that we know through research tends to be pretty helpful. And what a lot of people do to join conversations with people that maybe they don't know that well, or maybe don't know at all, is they'll start by kind of listening to the conversation from a distance, maybe watching a little bit, but not staring at the group. That's a little risky. So instead, a lot of people will use a prop like a cell phone or something that, they look distracted by. But really, what they're doing is they're eavesdropping. You just don't want to look like you're eavesdropping. That's where the prop can be kind of helpful. And as you're listening and kind of watching from a distance, you're really trying to identify the topic. What are they talking about? And you should probably find some sort of common interest with that topic. It's pretty risky to join a conversation where you don't know anything about the topic, because then you're probably going to slow the conversation down, asking lots of questions, and it might not be really interesting for them or for you. So, really helpful to find common interest. Now, let's say you find the common interest. You're not just going to yell from across the room, right? You're going to move a little bit closer to the group, probably no closer than about an arm's length away. And you don't want to interrupt the conversation. So you usually wait for a little pause in the conversation and then you mention the topic, right? And you can do that in one of three ways. You could either make a comment, you could ask a question, or you could give a compliment. So in that video that we just saw, the group was talking about sushi or some sushi restaurant. Well, what would be a comment? Oh, you're talking about that sushi place around the corner, right? That's a comment. It's on topic, right? She could also ask a question like, oh, are you talking about that sushi place around the corner? That's a question, but again, it's on topic. Or she could give a compliment, right? Oh, I love that place. Their sushi's great, right? But again, it's on topic. So then from there, we need to start to assess the interest of the group, because right now we're really a visitor in this conversation. So how can we tell if we're being accepted by a group? Well, a lot of people will say it's a feeling that you get, but in reality, not everybody gets the feeling. And if you're picking up on a feeling, it's probably because you're actually picking up on concrete behaviors that give you the feeling, right? So if a group wants to talk to you, what are they doing with their eyes? They're probably looking at you, right? And not making a face or rolling their eyes. What are they doing with their bodies? They're probably faced towards you, right? Not turned away, giving you the cold shoulder. And they might actually be talking to you, right? They're saying things. Those are the three behavioral signs that tell us if people want to talk to us. Are they looking at us? Are they facing us? Are they talking to us? Sometimes, even in small groups, you might have noticed that people will often talk kind of in a circle in a group. Well, what do they do with that circle if they want to talk to you? They kind of open the circle, right? And what do they do with the circle when they don't want to talk to us? Sort of close the circle, right? Give us that cold shoulder. So these are the behavioral signs that tell us if people are interested in talking to us. So let's say that it seems like they're interested and things are going well, and maybe we've never met them before. Then we can introduce ourselves, right? But if there are going to be introductions, they come later. It's optional. You don't have to introduce yourself, but again, if it happens later. So let's watch this next role play and think about what Alina is doing this time that's socially helpful in entering this group conversation.
Victoria, you'll never guess. I saw Gabe at my favorite sushi restaurant this weekend.
Nice. What restaurant was it?
Just the one right around the corner.
Oh, I've been meaning to check that place out.
Yeah, it's so close by and I'd never gone, but I went and it was really good.
Oh, what did you guys get?
I got a spicy tuna roll and I loved it.
Yeah.
You got the spicy tuna roll? That's what I always get.
Yeah, how good is it?
It's so good there. Have you guys tried the rainbow roll there?
I haven't. No, I actually got the salmon roll.
Oh, okay. That's good too. But
Yeah.
the rainbow roll is like their specialty.
I'll try it.
Cool.
If you were gonna go, what'd you get?
I love the California roll. It's my favorite.
I tried that one there actually. It's really good.
Nice.
Okay, so we would time out. We'd ask what Alina did that was socially helpful this time. And that would be an opportunity for a little repetition of instruction. We'd go through the different steps that she followed, and then we would do some perspective taking. This is helping with our social cognition, right? What was that like for the group this time? Well, it was fun. It was interesting, right? Pretty comfortable. What do they think of Alina this time? She seems nice, right? She seems friendly. And would they want to talk to her again? Probably. I mean, she was pretty friendly. So again, really helpful to not just talk about strategies that might be helpful in meeting new people or entering conversations, but we also have to show what these strategies look like, break everything down into very concrete steps, and also show what that looks like through a role play demonstration while doing perspective taking questions. Of course, the next step in this would be to practice, right? So if we were running a peers group, we would now break into smaller groups and have the teens or the young adults practice these strategies together following all of these steps. And then to generalize those skills, of course, the next step would be to practice out in the real world and have some kind of assignments to practice with actual peers in natural social settings. And then we would review that the next time we saw them. So it's a very specific formula for not only like learning these skills, but also teaching them. I also want to share with you some strategies related to handling teasing. Teasing is a type of verbal bullying. And this is an example of where really well-intentioned adults will sometimes give not great advice when it comes to how to handle teasing. And so we ask young people very often, what are they told to do in response to teasing? And most adults will tell young people to either ignore, walk away, or tell an adult. And then we ask them if these strategies work, and guess what they say? They don't tend to work that well. And the reason is that they're not really ecologically valid strategies. So imagine, for example, if I were to ignore someone who's teasing me. Well, this is kind of risky because if I ignore them, they're probably just going to keep teasing me, right? And I'm sort of making it easy for them to tease me because I'm not doing anything. And then it's making it more likely that I'm going to be teased in the future. So if our goal is to stop the teasing, ignoring the teasing is actually kind of risky. All right, now imagine that I walk away, like right away. What are they going to do? Well, they're probably going to follow me, right? And keep teasing me. And again, I'm sort of making it easy for them because I'm not really defending myself in any way or giving any kind of reaction that makes it not fun for them. So it's making it more likely that I'm going to be teased, not less. Again, they're going to follow me, they're going to keep teasing me. If my goal is to stop the teasing, walking away right away is actually pretty risky. Now, also telling someone in authority right away can also be risky. It's something a lot of young people are told to do. But the problem is, if I go tell someone right away, what's going to happen? Well, it's kind of my word against the other person, so they might not even get in trouble. And also, now they want to retaliate against me because I tried to get them in trouble. And so, again, this doesn't really relate to not talking to a parent or their social coach, but, going straight to a teacher and saying so and so is teasing me, again, doesn't tend to have a lot of traction in terms of making it stop. In fact, it can sometimes make it escalate because they might want to retaliate. So, if our goal is to stop the teasing, telling someone in authority right away isn't always the best option. It can be kind of risky. It's always an option, though, and it's important to point that out. That will always be an option to talk to somebody in authority. But there are other strategies that we can teach young people as well that can work a lot faster right in the moment. So, what are some of those socially helpful strategies, those ecologically valid strategies for handling teasing? Well, the reality is that all young people get teased. I mean, even older adults can get teased. And so, one of the things that has been found to be helpful in stopping the teasing is to really act like what the person said didn't bother you. It's a really helpful strategy. If you show that you're bothered, it's actually going to make the teasing fun for the person and they're going to be more likely to tease you again. Because think about it, what kind of reaction are they trying to get from you when they're teasing you? They want you to get mad or get upset or tease back. And when you do those things, you actually make it fun for them. So you're reinforcing that behavior. But if you show that what the person said didn't bother you, then you can actually, in some ways, kind of embarrass the teaser, right? Because they're trying to get a reaction. It's not the reaction they were looking for. It won't be fun for them. They're probably going to be less likely to tease us again. So if your goal is to really get this teasing to stop, then acting like what the person said didn't bother us is very helpful. But how do we do that? Well, there's different strategies for doing that. The simplest strategy is to simply just provide a short comeback that shows what the person said didn't bother you. It's very helpful to do that. Kids will say things like, whatever, or yeah, and am I supposed to care? That's supposed to be funny. They'll say things like, so what, or big deal, who cares? They'll say, tell me when you get to the funny part, or tell me when you get to the punchline. Might say anyway, kind of roll their eyes, but they give the impression that what the person said didn't bother them. And again, that kind of embarrasses the teaser, because they're looking for a different reaction. And now you just acted like what they said was kind of stupid. And so it might embarrass them a little bit, and that makes it not fun for them. So let's watch another role play and see what this is supposed to look like. Now, in this case, we're watching the socially helpful example. And in this video, you're going to see a young person by the name of Gabe who's being teased. And let's watch to see what Gabe is doing here that might be socially helpful in handling this teasing.
Hey, Dweeb, reading again?
Whatever.
You're such a loser. You're always reading.
Am I supposed to care?
Yeah, because everyone thinks you're a loser.
Anyway,
Okay, so we time out. We asked what Gabe did that was, socially helpful, right? He acted like what that person said wasn't bothering him, right? And eventually, yes, he walked away, but not until he gave at least a few comebacks first. All right, so what was that like for the person who was teasing him? Not very fun, right? Not very gratifying, not what he expected, right? And what did he think of Gabe? Wasn't really bothered. And would he want to tease Gabe again? I mean, probably not, unless he was used to getting a certain reaction, he might try again in the future, maybe something what we call an extinction burst. But in general, it wasn't really fun. If Gabe keeps giving these responses that show that he's not bothered, this person's going to move on. It's not fun for them anymore. So that's an example again of an ecologically valid strategy for handling teasing. That is what we should be teaching kids to do in response to teasing and bullying, not telling them to ignore or walk away or tell an adult things that we know don't work as well. So those are just a couple of the strategies that we teach in the Peers program. Now what I want to do is just wrap us up with some research findings. I want to really highlight the fact that Peers is an evidence-based social skills program that's very unique in the world of social skills programs. And so the first study that I want to share with you very briefly is a meta-analysis of the Peers for Adolescents program for autistic adolescents. And also, I want to share with you a randomized controlled trial using the Peers curriculum with autistic adolescents. Now, the first study that I referenced was a meta-analysis, and this is where researchers from the University of California, San Francisco, who have nothing to do with our program at UCLA, they just conducted a meta-analysis independently. They surveyed over 1,300 articles that were related to social skills training. And they found 12 of those articles that specifically related to the UCLA Peers for Adolescents program that were with autistic adolescents and were parent assisted. So that was kind of the qualifications. They had measures that they could look at, and they looked at effect sizes across these studies. Now, effect sizes tell you how meaningful a relationship is between variables. So a large effect size would be like 0.8 or higher, and that means that the research findings have some kind of practical significance. A medium effect size is like 0.5, and then a small effect size is around 0.2 or less, and that indicates that the findings have limited practical application or significance. I also mentioned that I was going to share with you a randomized control trial simultaneously with this meta-analysis to give you an idea of what the outcomes look like in a Peers for Adolescents program. So this was the very first randomized control trial that we did with our or actually it was the second randomized control trial we did with our autistic participants in a parent-assisted program. Average age was around 14 or 15, mostly male. Everyone was on the autism spectrum. All of these kids were had average or above average intellectual abilities and were mostly in inclusive educational settings. So here we see the findings on a measure called the test of adolescent social skills knowledge. This is basically testing whether or not the participants in our groups learned the skills that we were teaching. And so these are a number of different studies that were conducted across the globe using the parameters that I described. And what we see is that there was a large effect sizes across the boards in social skills knowledge in these various studies. And on the right side of the screen, you see this bar graph represents that randomized controlled trial, just to give you a sense of what the outcomes look like. And the blue bar here on the left of that bar graph are those who went through the Peers condition immediately. And the right bar are those who are waiting for social skills programming using peers. So this is just a wait period. And this is the change in scores from pre to post test. So you see pretty significant improvements here in the peers condition with nothing really happening in the control condition. Now, also looking at another main outcome is overall social skills on a measure called the Social Skills Improvement System. This is a measure that's used in most social skills research, across the globe. It's a standardized measure, and here we're seeing across these various studies that use that measure medium to large effect sizes. If you're looking at our randomized controlled trial, you're seeing almost a full standard deviation change on the social skills improvement system in those who went through peers immediately versus very little change in the control condition. So this isn't just statistically significant, it's clinically meaningful. This is almost an entire standard deviation change. And a standard deviation really with standard scores is any score 15 points above or below the mean, which would be about 100, right, would be clinically meaningful. We also look at the social responsiveness scale quite a bit in our studies. This is an autism screening tool that relates to social responsiveness and is normed on autistic individuals. And here we see medium to large effect sizes once again across these various studies. Here we also see a full standard deviation change in the peers condition with nothing happening early in the control condition. I should mention that the social responsiveness scale uses T-scores that have a mean or an average of 50 and a standard deviation of 10. So this is more than a full standard deviation change. That's not just statistically significant. Again, it's clinically meaningful. And then finally, in the meta-analysis, they also looked at social engagement. So this is whether or not they were having get-togethers with people that were unaffiliated with the peers program. And here we're seeing a little bit more variability across the different studies. There's small to large effect sizes. In our US-based study of peers, we're seeing on average about 4.5 additional get-togethers in the previous month. So a little bit more than one additional get-together a week. In the peers condition with very little change in the control condition. But you see that those effect sizes vary quite a bit across the globe. And what's interesting about this is that the studies where you see the small effect sizes are actually probably more a function of culture than anything. So for example, the Schum paper is out of Hong Kong. The Rabin paper is out of Israel, and the Yu paper is out of South Korea. These are places in the world where having formal get-togethers with your friends outside of school is less common. For example, in many parts of Asia, there's more emphasis on academics and after-school academic enrichment courses rather than having get-togethers with friends. So again, some of those differences may have more to do with culture than anything else. All right, finally, I also want to share with you a long-term follow-up study of peers. This was a study conducted 1 to 5 years after peers. We had 3 testing time points, a pre-test prior to the program, a post-test, and a 1 to 5 year follow-up. The average age of the participants in this study was around 17. The average time to follow-up was about 2.5 years after our program. And basically what we found here, this is the social skills rating system. It's that gold standard sort of instrument. It used to be called the social skills rating system. Now it's called the social skills improvement system. It uses standard scores with a mean of 100 and a standard deviation of 15. When our teens came into our program, they were in the decreased range of social skills. When they left our program, they were in the average range, and that maintained nicely 1 to 5 years later. Problem behaviors also were at the almost elevated range prior to coming to peers. They went down after leaving our program and went down even further 1 to 5 years later. The subscales of the social skills rating system also saw improvements. The blue here is the pretest, the red is the post-test, the green is the 1 to 5 year follow-up, and everything's moving in the right direction, and it's statistically significant from that baseline to that follow-up. So cooperation, assertion, empathy, self-control are going up, and internalizing and externalizing are going down. We're also seeing nice improvements on the social responsiveness scale. Remember, this is an autism screening tool, so we want the scores to go down, and we're seeing that people are coming in kind of in the severe range of autism symptoms related to social responsiveness, and we're seeing a significant decrease that goes to the kind of more mild, moderate range, and that maintains beautifully 1 to 5 years later. Same thing with the subscales. Everything's moving in the right direction, and it's statistically significant. So social awareness, social cognition, social communication, social motivation are all improving. Even autistic mannerisms related to perseveration and topics is going down, it's improving. This is looking at social engagement and the frequency of get-togethers in the previous month. And here we're seeing both parents and teens, when they come into our program, we're reporting about 2 get-togethers a month. When they leave our program, they're having anywhere from 4 to 6 get-togethers a month. And when they return 1 to 5 years later, they're having about 4 get-togethers a month. Likewise, social skills knowledge is increasing from pre to post test, and they also remember much of what we teach them, even 1 to 5 years later. I would really give a shout out to parents here. I really think that the power of this study is the parent involvement in our programs, and I think this research really demonstrates the power of that parent involvement, that the program really never ends when you include parents and other caregivers, and I think that's what this long-term follow-up is showing us. So finally, as we're just wrapping up, I want to share a number of resources. You can find these in your handouts. I mentioned that we do a lot of group-based interventions, but we also have a virtual boot camp that has 35 pre-recorded episodes for teens and adults that cover all of the topics that we teach in Peers. Families can kind of go at their own pace, and it's available on a YouTube channel that never expires. If you're interested in the boot camp model, we also do a lot of in-person boot camps as well. We do even dating boot camps. And if you want to see more about that, many of you have probably heard of the show Love on the Spectrum. And the original Love on the Spectrum was actually filmed in Australia. And I was fortunate enough to do a dating boot camp with the cast of the Love on the Spectrum series in Australia, in Sydney, Australia. And so their first season of that show features a peers dating boot camp if you want to hear more and learn more about that way of delivering this program. We also have a role play video library with over 100 role play videos anyone can access. They're publicly available and free to use on our Peers Clinic website. We have a free app that's available for iOS devices and Android devices. Again, anyone can access that, and it kind of operates like a video game where you go through different levels and learn the skills. There's little quizzes and lots of role play videos. I also have a book called The Science of Making Friends for families that maybe can't access a peers program in their community but want to learn more about the skills that we teach. Of course, for all the professionals out there, we do have a number of peers treatment manuals, both in English and in other languages. These are available for preschoolers, for adolescents, and for young adults. We also do certified training seminars for our professionals, and these are offered over a 3-day period, and they're teleconferences, so they're open to people worldwide, and we do them 7 times a year over Zoom at UCLA. And again, these are available for professionals wanting to implement peers in their practice. All right, so with that, I will go ahead and stop to take questions, but I want to once again thank the Organization for Autism Research for the opportunity to present to your group. Also want to thank them for all of their support of peers research over the years. We're so grateful to them for their philanthropy and their support. And again, happy to take questions. Thank you very much.